This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 139. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. In today's episode, we've got some updates on some trademark wars between WWE and Cody Rhodes, as well as a ton, when I say a ton, I mean a ton of information on what's going on with Impact Wrestling right now, as far as signing new wrestlers, releasing other wrestlers, having a vacated championship, and what's going on with their biggest pay-per-view of the year, Slammiversary, which takes place on July 18th. Also, we've got a little bit of an update here on what's going on with Rusev and what his new wrestling name will be. And doing it with me, as always, he'll be covering the biggest topics and trends of wrestling with me. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Cuz, my goodness, man, what a week of professional wrestling. We got an oldie but goodie manager in AEW that's getting over. We got dueling companies kind of having a war on a Wednesday night. Really interesting. But to start, I just want to get your sense. Was it wrong for WWE to counter-program AEW by calling it the Great American Bash? I mean, AEW is running Fyter Fest. Obviously, there's the connection to Cody Rhodes. And so WWE has been losing pretty epically in the ratings battle. They got a victory a couple days ago last week, kind of getting their fourth victory overall in the time that they've been competing with AEW. So what they do is they quickly put together a show called The Great American Bash, directly to counter-program Cody and Fyter Fest. Now, some people will say it's disrespectful. I kind of like it because it's saying, hey, we own a property that your dad kind of founded, made his name on. Let's do it, baby. NXT has been losing, but I do understand the argument where people will say, come on, Dusty, it's WWE. You're bigger than that. You don't need to counter-program when if you want to do the Great American Bash, put it on Raw or put it on SmackDown as a special show where more people will see it. So it was real interesting that WWE, even though they're the biggest company, would still counter-program a secondary company like AEW.
It doesn't blow my mind that WWE would do that. I thought it was kind of funny myself. I was like, man, Vince McMahon is so insecure that he has to run the exact opposite programming as AEW. Because the thing about Bash at the Beach is it's not just one night. It's a 2-night event like Fyter Fest is.
You're right.
It's taking place at the same exact time.
Oh, man, it's interesting in that it's WWE. I feel like, they are kind of sending shots across the bow, but so is AEW. We'll talk about it in regards to Taz and Brian Cage because something happened there that caught my attention in regards to a manager relationship with his wrestler. So it was real interesting, but a real good week of wrestling. I thought it was good. SmackDown good. Raw I was entertained by. So it was just all in all, I was very happy. What do you want to start with? What caught your attention first?
So I think what we do is we take that Taz bit and we segue from this first topic that we're going to talk about because they're related. They are so related. It is basically like me and you. They are cousins for sure. So let's start with this first topic, and then let's transition into what Taz had to say on AEW Dynamite regarding the Jon Moxley and Brian Cage match and what's going on with Jon Moxley. So does WWE have a problem because they have a ton of wrestlers and a ton of trainees ringside, and they've got them there during a pandemic, and WWE has had a ton of wrestlers come away with positive tests for COVID-19. And you had guys at the sidelines wearing no masks, and then they started getting all of these positive results in, and next thing you know, everybody is wearing a mask now. Should WWE have better health situations set up to help prevent wrestlers and trainees and in-ring staff and guys who handle the ring and as far as referees go as well? Should there be better safety precautions set up to protect all these guys? Because I think so. I think it's heavy having all these guys ringside.
Absolutely. WWE fashioned themselves as the best. They should be the leaders in testing, and they should be setting an example. You're absolutely right. But, bro, in business, and I know, it's looked at the testing and the protocols. Unfortunately, with these companies, it's going to only be looked at as a big liability. It's a cost. And testing and wearing masks and, all the protocols you got to go through with how many tests you got to run, that shit's got to be probably super expensive. And in a time when money's not coming in, that they're unfortunately having to make business decisions, and maybe one of them is going to be in regards to skimping and saving a little bit on costs. Now, should it be? Is it sloppy? Absolutely, it's sloppy when it comes out that several of your roster and several members of the staff get it. But unfortunately, it's all over. It's hard because, COVID is just striking at such a nasty rate that, you can make an argument that even with the most stringent protocols, it's a communicable disease that people could get. You can't prove potentially that they got it because they stepped foot in the performance center. They could have been one of those people that wanted to get out to the bars, or, the performance centers in Florida. It's open and it's a rash of, infections that have been going around. This virus is nasty. So all in all, the whole situation is tough, but I know you and I both raised an eyebrow when Taz mentioned it, the sloppy shot. That was awesome. I loved it. I thought that was like, wow, a direct shot at the WWE.
Oh, it was totally a direct shot at WWE. And it regards what's taking place here with Jon Moxley, whose wife is Renee Young, works for WWE. Jon Moxley and obviously Renee Young share a house. And Jon Moxley believes that he has tested positive, or that he is positive for having COVID. And he's going to pull himself and self-quarantine himself. The problem is it happened at arguably one of the worst moments, because you've been promoting this fight, you've been promoting this for Fyter Fest, and now you've got to reschedule it for a couple weeks later. And it's almost devastating to this card, because this was supposed to be a huge draw for Fyter Fest, and I think Taz's shots to WWE, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. Nothing gets this more heated and more revved up than when you've got former wrestlers taking shots at their former company. And remember, WWE, and I would say Taz, probably have some bad blood, because Taz was a guy who was there with ECW, and WWE ended up buying out ECW, kind of revamped that brand. I don't think WWE ever did a whole lot with Taz's character when he was in WWE. So there might be some, I don't want to say like it's horrible blood, but I could see Taz having no problem walking that line between getting kind of shitty with WWE and just kind of being super regular. But I loved him calling him out on it.
But now I got a question, because Taz is managing Brian Cage. And I saw online people were kind of debating when that segment was happening, because what I did was I DVR'd the Great American Bash and I watched AEW live. And what I love to do when I watch professional wrestling is I kind of see the hashtags and what people are kind of reacting to see if I'm in line or I'm way off. But a lot of people had the same thought. They were like, wait a minute, is Brian Cage managing Taz, or is Taz managing Brian Cage? Taz was getting over for himself. I mean, he was using catchphrases that were his. It kind of seemed like it could be also a great setup for a potential fallout with Brian Cage, but at the moment, it seemed like Wednesday's presentation was the Taz show. He got himself some nice airtime, some shots, and he was talking in a way that's been like, when he busted out with, beat him if you can, survive if he lets you, I was like, that's your line. You can't say that about Brian Cage. It's weird, because we're used to managers that typically hype up their client. And in this case, it seemed like Taz was getting himself over. It was interesting to see, at least on AEW. I thought it was maybe just a tad too much Taz in AEW on Wednesday, in my mind.
But what would you like him to do? I think it's great. I think it builds a lot of anticipation for what is going to take place between Jon Moxley and Brian Cage. Plus, Taz is a bit of a throwback, I mean, look, as a wrestling fan, you love nostalgic acts. That's a nostalgic act, especially if you watch ECW. I thought it was great. And you're right. I think Taz maybe got himself over a little bit, but what do you want the guy to do? He's so gifted on the microphone.
Well, but let Brian Cage talk for like a minute. Say something. Say a couple words like, Moxley, I'm going to get you. Yeah. At least throw out Taz's line. It looked like Brian Cage was there as a stagehand. It was weird. It's like Brian Cage is a monster. This is a guy you're trying to put over. And I didn't think that Brian Cage needed a complete mouthpiece. I don't think he needed like a complete Paul Heyman. He needed somebody just to hype it up and to, I thought with Brian Cage and the stature that he presents, that you just need somebody like Taz, get in, intro him, tell the world why Brian Cage is a destroyer. Brian Cage takes the mic and he lets everybody know why he's going to walk away from the matchup with Moxley as the champ. So you want to elevate Cage, and it kind of makes you go, well, can this guy talk, or why is this guy out here looking like Taz? He was in Taz's colors. So it was weird all the way around to see it and presented in that fashion, but it could be part of a different story or things like that. But in my mind, I just thought that Taz and AEW are using a lot of their managers like Jake the Snake in a way that's a little different than we're used to, because there's a lot more attention being given to the managers than we're used to in the last 5 years or so.
Do you remember when Bobby the Brain Heenan would manage for certain stables or certain wrestlers? Yeah. I mean, he did probably 95% of the talking for that wrestler. And I think what you're getting with AEW, you're getting something a little bit similar. You've got, like you said, Jake the Snake, and you've got Taz in this case doing the majority, if not all, of the conversation. And it's not to say that Brian Cage can't cut a great promo. I think he can do an okay job with his promos. I just think Taz helps deliver it and helps get you a little bit more into what's going to take place than, say, a guy like Brian Cage does. And I think that's probably why they're leaning on that. And you're right, it is totally counter to what WWE does with their programming and what they do with their managers. So, I'm not opposed to it. I'm interested to see where this goes because, like you said, this could build to a really good story going forward. Right now, a really good story that's taking place on SmackDown is the development of Baron Corbin. And
yes.
I think at this point, he is arguably the best heel in WWE. He is the best bad guy that they have. On SmackDown, he ends up calling out The Undertaker. They do this great tribute to The Undertaker, and Baron Corbin's in the ring, and he calls out The Undertaker, calls him a butt kisser, and says he's been overrated for the past 30 years, which then brings Jeff Hardy down to attack him. They have a match, and in the end, Hardy wins, but Corbin continues to attack him after the match. Baron Corbin has done a great job. I just want to give some praise, and I want to take this time to just praise Baron Corbin for being a guy who, when he first started, me and you were like, this guy is so bad. So bad. But they helped develop his character. And they've given him some leeway. They've given him some time. And he's done a great job lately. And I'm really, really impressed with Baron Corbin and the job he's done as a heel.
Absolutely. The investment has come away in terms of, when you got King of the Ring, King Corbin, the feuds that he's been in, the great in-ring work. Overall, absolutely. He deserves to be the top heel. And, if they continue with this, universal brand situation where he can show up anywhere, he'd be great to wrestle potentially Drew McIntyre in the future, wrestle some of the faces that are over there on Raw, show up on NXT. He's great all the way around. The investment paid off, and I think he's just naturally a heel. He's a shit talker. He's got that bravado. He's got that look like, okay, I want to see him get his ass kicked, and that's what makes a good heel. And he plays it perfectly, and that's all you want in your heel is you want to see the face destroy him. That's the job of the heel. And it's just been executed perfectly, and everybody's taken notice, you and I included.
Yeah, he's been doing a fantastic job. Something else coming out of Raw that I think is pretty fantastic because I'm curious to see how it plays out, and I really want to gauge your interest in this. And this has been brewing for the last couple, we'll say 2, maybe 3 weeks. But it seems as though Zalina Vega's stable of Andrade and Angel Garza is about to implode. On the implosion meter, I've got it pegged at about an 8.5, maybe a 9. I want to know how you see this playing out, and I want to know where you think Zalina Vega ends up and what does she end up doing? Because I have a feeling that she's going to end up siding with one of these two guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It could go that route where she sides with Andrade. I think he's the bigger star. I think that he's a character that is unbelievably talented and is somebody that would be noteworthy. But at the same time, when you look at what the WWE needs right now, if Zalina Vega can suit up and wrestle, you probably say, you know what, using her as a manager is not needed. I think that maybe the course of action will be an implosion, a match, maybe at SummerSlam, between the stable and things like that. And then she goes on her merry way and becomes a female wrestler and does her thing because she's got that persona that, do you really have a lot of heel characters that are women in WWE right now that you absolutely hate? I think if you invest, like we talked about with Baron Corbin, if you invest in her, I think she'd be a great heel where she does sneak attacks, where she's a hit and run artist, where, she's manipulative and she gets a belt. I could see her as champion easily. She's got the look. I think she's got a presentation. And so using her as a manager might not be the best use of this talent.
Yeah, and look, we've seen her in the ring and she can bump around, and I think that she has the ability to wrestle. The way I see this working out is I think you're right. I think we're going to have an implosion, and it's going to set up a match at SummerSlam. And I think in the end, she ends up siding with Angel Garza, and I think she continues to manage him. I think Andrade goes on his merry way to do his own thing, and I think Angel Garza gets to keep Zalina Vega as a manager. And I think what you'll end up seeing is her get a little bit more involved in the wrestling ring. And I think you might see some of these co-gender tag matches, and I think you get to see a little bit more of Zalina Vega start to spread her wings a little bit. And I think Angel Garza, I think Angel Garza is fantastic. I think he's got all the talent in the world. I think Andrade's great as well, but I think Angel Garza right now, if I had to give a nod to which one of these guys is a little bit hotter, I'm going to go Angel Garza over Andrade. And it's only by a little bit, but I think Zalina Vega and Angel Garza together forms a really, really nice team.
Nice. And then they have a chance to, even if they are together, to do some things. It's interesting.
Yeah. In recent weeks, we've had the reintroduction of Ruby Riott, who took another loss this week. I think going forward, she's going to be used just a little bit more. But I want to gauge how you think her character is going to evolve, because I could see something happening with this women's division, and I think it could center around a character like Ruby Riott. So, do you see her getting utilized more frequently? And if so, how do you see her character evolving? Because this has been, 2 out of the last 3 weeks she's been on TV. She's got a couple different storylines going on right now. And it's interesting to see this wrestler who was so highly touted for so long get injured, then come back, and then kind of toil away. And now it seems as though they're going to shine a new light on her.
Yeah, is it too many stops and starts with this character? See, I don't know. Maybe she's in need of a rebrand or anything like that. It just sucks because part of the Riott Squad doesn't do a whole heck of a lot. She comes back, and then in her debut, she gets doesn't look that strong. So it's just interesting with some characters when they don't get that shine, or when they get reintroduced, they don't come back in the way that just really gets them over. And I think that's what maybe the biggest issue right now with some of the mid-card is who's going to take that next step forward from the men and the women. And they're putting some, opportunities out there for the likes of some of the, talent that's out there. And you think of Apollo Crews as one. On the women's side, maybe it's Ruby Riott, but they got to do a better job. And she's got to do a better job of presenting herself in a way that makes you want to care, other than just say, okay, here she is again. Oh, she's going to be another bad angle.
So I think with the promo and the vignette that they showed of her and Liv Morgan from a week ago, I think what you're going to get is you're going to get Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan come back together as a tag team, because they don't have a lot of female tag teams in the women's division, right? So I think you pair them two together, and I think what you have now is you have less leader-follower, and I think you have more of a dynamic duo as a team complement. And I think what you end up getting is you get Ruby Riott going from this heel to a face character. And I think that's how she's going to evolve, and she's going to bring up, because I think Liv Morgan's a pretty solid wrestler. She just doesn't get enough time. I think you're going to start to give both these wrestlers a little bit more time, and I think their characters are really going to start to flourish. And possibly they could be your future tag team women's champions.
Absolutely. It'd be great. Something new, something fresh. Just for me, women's tag team wrestling just doesn't hit the spot for me, at least on the WWE side.
So with the legend killer Randy Orton being brought back to life, or at least it feels like the legend killer Randy Orton has been brought back to life, takes out Edge, takes out Christian, has this run-in going on with the Big Show. Who should Randy Orton take out next?
Who should be next? Do you think he should continue this legend killer status and take out older talent and things like that? I like it, but I'm more in line with him kind of, continuing maybe a feud with some of the characters and some of the talent that's on WWE. I know it's tough because of where and the statue of Randy Orton at this point in his career. It's always great seeing Ric Flair do his thing, but it would be interesting. If it was in a better spot, I would like to see Kevin Owens take on Randy Orton. I think that'd be an epic battle that could be done great if they could present Kevin Owens as a face. But you know what? I'm uncertain as to who is next on the roster that could potentially be the guy. I mean, you've already revisited AJ Styles. You've had, it seems like right now it should be the top. It should be Drew McIntyre. It should be, on the other side, Braun Strowman. It should be those two, and that's it. And, if you want to, like we've said in previous podcasts, if you want to revisit something that could be a revenge situation, a Brock Lesnar, and then you have Brock, if he's going to make his semi-annual appearance, who else to put over than Randy Orton, in my mind?
I like the Brock Lesnar throw in there. I think that's interesting. But you've got to remember, what they're doing with Randy Orton right now is he's kind of the scum of the earth. He's such a distasteful badass. I could see him take out Ric Flair. And like him and Ric Flair's kind of been mentoring him and bringing him along here in this new revamp of Randy Orton. But how badass would it be if the next legend he takes out, and I'm not talking about just regular guys, I'm talking about legends. The next guy he takes out is Ric Flair. And then you have Triple H answer the bell for his hero. And then you have a revisit of Randy Orton and Triple H. And then Randy Orton, after he takes out Triple H, can go on his merry way to take out whomever else, whether it be Edge if he comes back healthy, or if it's Drew McIntyre, whomever it may be. What do you think about that?
That would be great. I think it's an unbelievable situation in regards to a kickoff point for then Randy Orton to have a great match with Triple H. Triple H puts him over in a good maybe 10, 12-minute match, and then boom, you have Randy Orton go on to the next thing. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I want to gauge. I mean, we briefly talked about the Great American Bash, but I want to gauge, what did you think about it as a whole for day one? Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was good. I mean, I would grade it overall like a B-. I definitely thought that it was an entertaining situation, good matchups, everything that we talked about. Overall, it was okay, but like you said, some of the issues at hand maybe took some of the luster off. What'd you think?
I thought it was a pretty good show. I don't think it was great by any means. I think what you're going to get next week will probably be better than what you got this week. However, I do think there were a couple of matches that were really, really good and really, really interesting. And I think the Roderick Strong versus Loomis strap match, anytime you get a strap match, I'm always invested. And I thought this was a really good, really solid match. Roderick Strong is great in the ring. Loomis is an intimidating drill sergeant looking character. And the fact that they're strapped together and you basically beat each other until one can't go on any longer, I thought was an interesting caveat to this show and was a great stipulation for this match. Did you enjoy the Roderick Strong Loomis strap match?
Yeah, I thought in my notes I have that as the second best highlight. I thought that the Sasha Banks match was entertaining too, and to have her put someone over was really awesome. Like I said, exactly for a card that I watched on DVR, it just felt like to me for me, I was always a WCW guy too, and a fan of WWE, a fan of both. The Great American Bash would always have good matchups. You'd have, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, you'd have Sting, Luger, you'd have a lot of great matches. And then when the NWO feud, the Great American Bash represented greatness. It didn't represent a week put together card that was thrown together in a week. You know what I mean? You don't put the Great American Bash on a Wednesday show that has kind of an average card. So you're absolutely right. So for me, giving it a B- is actually more of an indictment. And those were the only two highlights, with Sasha Banks and the Roderick Strong. Everything else was okay. It's good to check out, take some notes and things like that, but nothing really was spectacular.
Yeah, I love the Sasha Banks Io Shirai match. I thought it was good. It was nice to see Sasha Banks put Io Shirai over. Those were the two big matches, though, for me. Those were the two that really stood out, was the strap match and then the Sasha Banks Io Shirai match. Otherwise, much to what you said, it was kind of just an okay card. There was nothing really great. There was nothing where you're like, man, that is awesome. I thought those two matches in particular were probably the most interesting. I do want to transition into AEW's Fyter Fest. So again, Fyter Fest is what is being countered by WWE. Fyter Fest has been set up for weeks now, and it's going to be a 2-day event. So this was day 1. And overall, I thought Fyter Fest was better than NXT's Great American Bash. And I think it was better by not miles. I thought it was just slightly better. I thought there was a couple more interesting matches. I thought there were a couple of interesting things to kind of come out of Fyter Fest. What was your take on Fyter Fest?
Yeah, absolutely. I graded a B+. Was better. I thought it won the night. It was the better show. Watched it live. Was a little bit surprised that Cody Rhodes wasn't a main event match, but I think it allowed for the match to take place in its natural form, to go 20 minutes. I think you and I both caught wind of a little bit of the tactics that were being used by Cody Rhodes. Again, a little bit of a wonky finish, but the match itself told a good story. Cody Rhodes is doing his thing, so I was definitely impressed with the card in and of itself, and I think it did a good job. Now, in regards to the disappointment and things like that, it could have been better, but at the same time, I'm of the opinion that, Fyter Fest has always represented kind of now a nice card, and they definitely gave it the respect it deserved. And I thought it's an okay watch. If you want to go back and watch it again, I think Fyter Fest night 1 was okay. It was a B+, not an A show, but I just felt like it was a decent opportunity for Cody Rhodes and a couple of the angles to develop.
What do you think about Cody Rhodes? Because I feel like we have a heel turn coming from him. You brought Cody up quite a few times. I think he had one of the better matches of this evening. Do you see him turning heel possibly in the next coming weeks? Or do you think this might be a character that kind of walks that line but never really goes over it? Or do you think we're going to continue to have a face from Cody?
No, absolutely. I think that you got to look that he's got Arn Anderson with him, so he's going to have that edge to him. I don't think he's going to be a heel. I think right now he's the ultimate face. And I think you could do it. You could pull it off down the line, but not yet. I think it's too soon. Maybe a year or two from now, maybe you have an ultimate betrayal, and it'd be interesting to talk about who he turns on. But right now, I think it's great that he's doing what he's doing, having good matches. He's starting to turn that television title into something unbelievable and really fun. So I thought the Hagar Cody Rhodes match was probably among the better highlights on that show. But the rest of the show was good in and of itself. I really like the way that AEW puts together shows. They're entertaining, and they keep you invested at least. You may not agree with everything, but at least you can pay attention and be invested in the advancement of the story, which I thought was great all the way around.
Yeah, I think like you said, the advancement of the story, and I think the way that they present and tell the story is probably most interesting. I thought something fun that they gave us was when you had the tag match for the AEW Tag Team Championship. You had Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, and you had the Best Friends show up. And the Best Friends were driven to the ring by, I believe it was Trent Beretta's mom in her minivan.
Yeah.
Like, it's just funny stuff like that.
Yeah.
That you're just kind of like, man, that's awesome. It's cute and it's gimmicky and it's fun is what it is. And I thought that was a nice little touch, a nice little caveat. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it was very fun too. It's really interesting stuff.
Now we talked about the Brian Cage Jon Moxley match, right? And we talked about how Taz cut his promo where he took shots at WWE. I want to get your sense on the postponement of this and the fact that they are moving it to Fight for the Fallen. How do you feel about them postponing it? How do you feel about them moving it to that specific day? What are your takes on this being moved? Because this was basically the main draw of day 2. This was going to be the big event for day 2. And look, I think Jon Moxley's doing the best thing, right? His wife has tested positive for it. He could be asymptomatic. He is quarantining himself, and he is staying away from everybody else. And I think that is helping to keep not only Brian Cage safe, but everybody who works at AEW safe, as well as he did it far enough in advance to where they could make adjustments and reschedule how they were going to lay out Fyter Fest. Yeah, it kind of sucks because the monkey wrench got thrown into the main plans, but I think Jon Moxley has handled this appropriately and has done the best job you can do with a situation like this.
Absolutely. It's not something that they wanted to have happen, but it's a situation in which, you know, he's married to Renee Young, and that's what happened. And COVID's, not going to discriminate. It's going to attack sports, college sports, the NFL. We got to be prepared because you and I do Doc and Jock. You're doing 2 other podcasts. You got to be prepared to factor in COVID in our discussions, in our game plans. It's going to be almost online with a more immediate impact, like an Achilles tear. It's like COVID out for 2 weeks immediately. And the ramification is what makes it more severe is, for example, if you or I get tested and we get a positive test, we got to then tell everybody, hey, in our family, you got to quarantine too, so it doesn't spread. So let's say, for example, Matthew Stafford on the Detroit Lions gets tested and he's positive. That means potentially three quarterbacks could be affected. So let's say, for example, now you get, a positive test. What if he's in the ring now in a tag match, in a 6-man tag? Then do those guys got to be gone? So they got to take this seriously. And we got to factor in that we're going to be, having a certain number of angles that we're excited for that get washed away because of COVID. And it sucks because mentally, I don't think nobody wants to admit that. But each angle that gets delivered, we should be appreciative that a story was created, was told in the ring, was enhanced. And then when we get the payoff in this new era, we got to be grateful for every match that takes place because it can be washed away in the blink of an eye.
No, you're absolutely right. And, I do want to compliment AEW on the way that they've handled this entire situation. I think they're doing the right thing. I think this is the right move. I think it sucks for Fyter Fest. I think it sucks for day 2, but in the grand scheme of things, can you kind of shift some stuff around? Can you give this tag match that we're going to get next week a little bit more time so everybody can get all their shit in? Absolutely. And I think what you're going to get is you're going to get a better product for Fyter Fest Day 2, and you'll get a better product when we go to Fight for the Fallen, especially between these 2 wrestlers.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. And I just think that it's going to be another great situation to elevate, Moxley. It should be a great way, I think, a great opportunity for both to have a really good match when it does take place.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fantastic.
I think so, too. I think that, Jon Moxley and where he goes next will be interesting to watch, too, because, he's a title holder. Who's the next man to step it up? And who's the guy that's going to be able to, have an intriguing feud? Because it's been good with Moxley, but you need him to kind of throttle it up. Like, I think maybe 10% better. They got to use him just a little bit better. He's got to keep delivering as a title holder.
Nope, absolutely, man. You're right on the money with it. Look, he's been carrying that title since he took it off of Jericho, and I think he's been doing a fantastic job. I look forward to this match between him and Brian Cage. I think it's going to be really, really good. Was there anything else from AEW's Fyter Fest that really stood out to you that you wanted to get to?
Anything else that stood out? No, everything we've talked about was on my note sheet, so I'm looking forward to the next week of it. And I just think that, AEW and WWE in this Wednesday Night War, really interesting. But if you look at it combined, the numbers aren't where I thought they would be. I thought that the shows would be around 1 and 1.2. They've been hovering around 700K for a good, 3 to 4 months. And it's trended up a little bit, a lot of victories for AEW. WWE won last week, so they've only had 4 victories. So it hasn't been a competitive battle, but I just am a little bit surprised at the Wednesday numbers. I thought they would be actually much stronger.
Why do you think everything's down?
So the crowds, I think, too, and also, too, there's a lot of wrestling programming in the ring and outside, too. I mean, if you're a network subscriber, you can sit and watch wrestling 24 hours a day. There's so many podcasts. There's so many great original programming. I think a lot of people, might not be thrilled with the current state of professional wrestling, and they can live vicariously through the past. I mean, you can live the Attitude Era again. You can live through Steve Austin. The Rock, when he debuted, was fascinating. And I think, too, when a major star like The Undertaker retires, I think it kind of represents a little bit of a lull in the business. Yes, there are a lot of new characters, but they're not yet over to the degree where you're like, oh, my God, I can't miss X. You can catch everything, at your own pace. So it's a different way. Right now, it's kind of in that stage where it was just before the Attitude Era, where you're still developing the stars, and we need like another year until like the fruit ripens and we get the rewards from all these guys that they're putting time in. It's still early in a lot of the development of AEW and WWE with some of the talent, because there's just not a lot of top end stars, maybe half a dozen across two companies. And so, but they're coming. There's going to be a boom in 2021, 2022 of stars that you're going to see. It's just right now, without the fans, it's a different product, and it's just not as good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think going forward, as things start to normalize, I think the numbers will start to climb a little bit. You're right. It's kind of a different feeling when there's nobody in the stands and there's nobody in the crowd. I get why WWE has done it with the trainees and everybody at the developmental center. I don't necessarily agree with it because you got people getting sick all over the place, but I do understand why they do it. I just don't necessarily think the risk is worth the reward.
All right, cuz we just reviewed the biggest topics and trends. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What caught your attention in the world of professional wrestling?
So Rusev, real name Miroslav Baryanev, will be using the name Miro following his WWE release. He announced this in Lana's most recent YouTube video. Rusev will be able to move to any promotion next month following the expiration of his 90-day non-compete clause. So expect to see Miro tearing it up at some show before too long, possibly AEW, maybe Impact. I don't think Impact, but probably AEW. Speaking of Impact, Impact Wrestling has reportedly signed 2 former WWE stars after reports that offers have been made surfaced this past weekend. Sportskeeda's Gary Cassidy reported that Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows will be going to Impact and that the deal is now done and they are expected to debut at Slammiversary on July 18th or immediately after.
Wow.
So the report also notes that as part of the deal, the duo can wrestle for New Japan Pro Wrestling, which was something that was said to be part of an offer when it came out over the weekend. The duo is still under their 90-day non-compete clause per their WWE release, but that ends just in time for Slammiversary. Also, don't be surprised if they might pop up on AEW. I know that they were on Instagram. They're taking some pictures with the Young Bucks, so it looks like there might be some crossover there. It looks like they've got a really nice deal from Impact, but it sounds like Impact is going to be their new home. Impact Wrestling also teased the return of Eric Young at its upcoming Slammiversary pay-per-view on Tuesday in a tweet that showed his Super Eric persona with his cape and his mask. Sticking with Impact, both Michael Elgin and former champion Tessa Blanchard have been released by the promotion. Michael Elgin is actually serving a suspension. I should probably clarify. He's serving a suspension, and this is concerning some past allegations against him that have resurfaced, as well as some more recent accusations of him sending inappropriate photos to women, and Impact has announced that that suspension is pending further review of said allegations. Now, Tessa Blanchard's is a little bit different. Fightful Select is reporting that Blanchard's contract was due to come up on June 30th anyways, despite being advertised to defend the World Championship in a 5-way match at Slammiversary on July 18th. That match is no longer on the promotion's event page. Blanchard has been absent from Impact TV during the pandemic. Although she couldn't travel, the promotion had asked her to tape some material to air, but she asked for a day rate, and the two parties couldn't agree to terms on what she'd be paid. PW Insider detailed that the footage was originally going to be a sit-down interview with announcer Josh Matthews. Impact, however, never received any footage. Now, speculation is WWE may be interested in Tessa Blanchard and bringing her in for the women's division. You remember all the issues with Tessa Blanchard earlier this year, with basically other women standing up for her, because when she was over in Japan, she was kind of a nasty Nelly, and as well as when she was working in Impact, she used to kind of beat up on some of the other girls, and she was pretty abusive to some of the other female wrestlers. In trademark war news, WWE has filed for Wrestle War and Bella Army, while Cody has filed for the Nightmare Family logo. Remember, these two sides have been going at it for trademarks for the last, I want to say, 8 months. Just recently, WWE was filing for some of Dusty Rhodes' old trademarks, and Cody was trying to fight that. And it sounds like this is going to be one of those wars that will be waged for quite some time until both parties gain control of what it is that they're looking for. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes, my friend.
Good stuff, sir. Always enjoy the podcast. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you have any questions, if anything we've said doesn't hit you the right way, feel free and hit us up. We read all the tweets, all the messages. It's good stuff. We enjoy watching professional wrestling. And the best part about hosting a weekly wrestling podcast is the engagement we get to have with those of you watching. So make sure you watch, listen. If you want to subscribe, all you got to do is go to the favorite place you download your podcast and search Detroit Sports Podcast. And when you hit that subscribe button, our daily content will find you. You don't got to do anything else. And that's what's making this fun. Adam and I recording since 2013. Make sure you pay attention to Adam's 2 other projects. They're taking off. They're making noise. They're doing good things. The Throwback, Adam is a glutton for punishment. He not only wants to watch wrestling with no fans, he wants to relive the Detroit Lions. And he's going through and he's watching the 2012 season again with Brendan Riley. And they also host the Practice Squad, which airs on Thursday. So make sure you check out the Throwback every single Sunday. And our lineup is great. It's set. And if you have any questions, message us anytime at Detroit Podcast. It's always fun and a great endeavor that we've been a part of. And we always appreciate the opportunity to watch professional wrestling and talk about it each and every Friday on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. Talk next week, cuz.
Have a good one.